Hello, class. In this video, I'm going to show how to use SketchUp. Now, if you watched any of my other videos, you know I have other SketchUp videos out there. Those other videos really focus on how to make a good model when you know a lot about the existing architecture. Perhaps you have it drawn in CAD and you're trying to model accurately and then take that into a rendering. This set of video is a little differently. It's more as an introduction to SketchUp and really how to use it more as a design tool. Ultimately, what I often find when using SketchUp is I might have one set of models that are in the early phases where I'm doing push-pulling and a lot of thinking, and then I just design the building through various means, AutoCAD, Revit, hand sketching, all those things, and then come back when it's more fully designed and then do the sort of more formalized modeling after. So this is to be more of an introduction to learn SketchUp and talk about how you might use it sort of introductory as a design example rather than a finalized modeling tool. So just wanted to get that out of the way. So assuming that you are completely new to SketchUp, I do have the open file of SketchUp here. And what you're going to want to do, at least for this class, is use architectural inches. And I'm just going to close this down because I already have it opened and ready to go. Again, quick introduction to SketchUp here. What you have is a person always comes in. The person might be different based on the version of SketchUp you have. I usually just go to my arrow, select them by clicking on them and then pressing delete to get rid of them. The rest of the stuff we see here is not actually any modeled components. So by default, just by what SketchUp has, this gray field here, that's the ground. This sort of light bluish gray gradient here, that's the sky. Therefore, that's the horizon line because SketchUp natively works in perspective. And so you have a horizon line. You'll see that as we begin modeling. And then the blue line, the green line, and the red line, which I will go over more in depth in class, those are basically just your orientations. They help you move. This is your 0, 0 point, as it's called. Again, we see it on the screen, but when you do any output, none of that stuff will be there. What we're really going to do is I have a house that we've been working to practice on some practice examples, and we're going to model it without any official floor plans or elevations or dimensions. We're just going to go about how you might do this if you're really starting from scratch and might be designing it. Now we have some advantages in that the house is already designed, so I do know some answers, but I want to walk through it like this is an early phase and teach you some basic principles of SketchUp as we go. So, to draw, what I'm going to start by drawing is what approximately the size of this house would be. Now, in any building that you might be drawing, there are usually typical sizes for buildings. Like an apartment building is usually within a certain range of sizes, a school is a certain range of sizes, so on and so forth. And a house is too. So there's certainly a lot of flexibility, but just knowing approximate dimensions at the early phase is fine and good. And ultimately, a lot of it just comes down to proportion. And it's an iterative process. There's plenty of time to change it along the way. So I again do have the advantage having drawn this house already. So I'm going to start at going along the red 45 feet long and drawing over here and then up the green, move my mouse so I get the green line. That is 90 degrees. It just doesn't quite look that way because this is perspective. And you'll get used to it. I do prefer working in perspective. So we're going to come up 25 feet, which is a reasonable size for a house. And I'm just going to complete the rectangle. Again, along the red, I'm going to see the red line. So make sure I'm drawing it straight because visually you're not going to know because of the perspective. So you have to use those dimensions and then draw along the green and close it off. And when I close it off, we see that we get the surface here. That surface is automatically made. One of the advantages of SketchUp here. And then the really great thing about SketchUp is the push and pull function to make something 2D, three-dimensional. So I'm going to go to my push-pull tool, just click on that surface here and start pulling up. Automatically, it's going to make a box. And I'm going to set it to about 25 feet tall. So it's going to allow my floor to floors to be generous, but not ridiculous. Again, I'm sort of thinking about how tall a house might be. And as we'll see, there'll be a shed roof on here, and that's going to allow for that accommodation. But making a rectangle, super simple. Draw the square, push, pull it up. That's the power of SketchUp here. So now, What I'm going to do now is, since I do know this house is going to be a shed roof, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start making the roof line itself. Not the roof, we'll come back and do that in a couple steps from now, but I'm going to start by making the roof. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to this arrow here, and I'm going to just select one line. We see it turns blue, that means it's selected. And I'm going to go to my move tool right here. I'm just going to click on it and I'm going to pull it down to about halfway. I mean, I could type in 12 feet or 12 and a half feet to be identical to mathematically precision, but that's not what the point of SketchUp is about. It's about looking at it and saying, how much angle do you want the shed roof to be? Do I want it to be really steep? Well, if I do that, it probably has some problems with headroom, but early on, who cares? Do I want it to be fairly flat? So you're going to pick something, you're going to eyeball it and drop it down to what makes sense, just like that. So you can see we took a three-dimensional form and quickly changed it. Super simple to do gable roofs and other types of roofs in a similar format in SketchUp. Okay. Now, the really great thing about SketchUp is that you can draw new lines and push and pull all over the place. So I know, for example, that in the house that we're working with, they have some things that move forward and some things that push back. And all you have to do is draw in some lines to get those working. So I know there's some sort of mass here that's ultimately for the stairs. So I'm going to say this is the left-hand side. I'm going to draw a line down. I'm going to come over to approximately how wide it is. Again, this is design, so just choose by eye how wide you want this mass to be. And once I draw that line down, we can see, just as demonstration, if I click on each face, it divided that surface independently. So what I can do is I'm going to click off of it, go to push pull, and now I can just pull this mass out a little bit, just like that. Again, how far do you want to go out? That's up to you. Use your eye. Try to gauge what feels right to you. Okay. Similarly, I know in this next zone in here, that was actually pushed in my sort of original house. So I'm just gonna come over again, what I feel right. I'm gonna make it a little wider, I think, somewhere around here. And I'm gonna push pull this, and I can push pull it in. So again, whatever you feel is the right depth, go ahead and push pull that in just like that. I'll come over here in a minute. There's a little bay on that side, but on this side, approximately lined up with that, there's the same sort of pushed in area on this side of the house. If you wanted to make it exactly the same, I could just draw a line over temporarily from this one just to make sure it's in line. Notice I'm going along the green lines and coming down along the blue, and then I can push pull this in, to whatever I feel is about right there. And I can then come back, not that I necessarily have to, but I can go back and delete those lines just to make that all a solid surface again. All right, so we got the basic form here. Now, when it comes to the bay that I have coming out on this side, I think the best way to do it is probably to make its own shape. I could go and push and pull this thing out further. That's perfectly fine. There's hundreds of ways of doing it, but just to show something different, and I think possibly slightly easier, since it is uniquely a different form on this house, I'm going to make it a different shape. And so I like to work in groups a lot. I prefer more groups and components, which I'll get into the differences in lecture, than fewer. When in doubt, make them. So I'm going to make this shape as sort of the main rectangle. I'm going to make this a group by selecting everything with my arrow, right-clicking over top of it, and say make group. And then what I can come down is I can go back to my pencil tool and sort of draw on the plan. I was like, okay, well, I think the base should come out about that far on that side, and in the front maybe about the same, so it comes to there, and it comes over this way. And in this case, it doesn't quite go to this form here, so it comes back here and it closes here, and I have a closed shape. Now, because this object's in a group, these two lines have to be redrawn, because this is going to be its own group, so I have to have duplicate lines there. So when I draw those, we get the complete shape, and I can push pull this up to about the halfway point approximately, since it is just a bay on the first floor in this case. Now, since I've made that shape, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to triple click on it with my arrow. It's another way of selecting, and then right click and make that a group. So I have this group and that a group there. And just a quick note, and I'm going to end this video before moving on to the next steps. Before I do, I'm using the untagged layer for everything. Generally, that's how I work. It's lots of people work this way. Layers aren't as important in SketchUp as they are in other software. It's not to say they shouldn't ever be used. Like if you want to turn things on and off because of an animation reason or a work reason or other things, then use them in that case, but only apply the layer to the group level, not the object level. There's always exceptions to every rule, but just as a basic learning, that's going to be easiest. And in fact, in this video, we probably won't use layers at all, that just keeping everything untagged is fine when you're working in SketchUp. So we have some of our basic model making. You just draw a rectangle, you push pull it in all kinds of ways. You draw a single line, push pull in all kinds of ways, and you can really quickly come up with a form. So the next set of videos, we'll be looking at making this a little bit more realistic with some roofs and details and windows, and we'll get all the way through with that. But hopefully you've had a good job so far. Practice, have fun, experiment, ideally, and hopefully you're having fun learning SketchUp. I'll see you in the next video.